Something shifted the moment I saw his truck crawl up the dusty road, its tires crunching gravel in that familiar, comforting way that only happens out here, where the air smells like hay and time moves just a little slower. I knew he was coming. We'd planned this trip for weeks. Still, I wasn't prepared for the way my chest tightened at the sight of him, like something dormant inside me had just been stirred awake. He leaned out the window with that crooked grin I used to brush off, as just his way, easygoing, warm, harmless. But now, it hit different. His hair was longer than the last time I saw him, curling slightly at the ends from the humidity, and his denim shirt was rolled up to the elbows, revealing forearms dusted in sun and work. I waved him in, pretending like I wasn't suddenly 13 again with a schoolboy crush I didn't know what to do with. My name's Jesse, and I've lived on this ranch most of my life. Quiet suits me. I like fixing things with my hands, the smell of saddle leather, and early mornings when the fog still clings to the fence posts. Most people wouldn't call me sentimental, but I've always held on to things longer than I should. Letters I never sent, boots too worn to wear, and maybe people who mean more to me than they should. He's one of them. We met 5 years ago. Mutual friends, shared drinks, a few summers helping out during harvest. He was always the one who made the whole room lighter. We kept in touch over the years, always in this casual, surface-level way. But lately it felt different. He texted more often, called just to check in, asked questions that lingered longer than they should have. When he said he needed a break from city life and asked if he could stay at the ranch for a few days, I told him yes without hesitation. I didn't say it out loud, but a part of me ached for it, for him, for whatever this caught tension was that we kept dancing around like we were too scared to look it in the eye. I told myself it was nothing, that he was just a friend. But as I watched him hop out of his truck and stretch under the wide open sky, his eyes squinting against the light as he looked straight at me and smiled, I knew something was about to change. And maybe, just maybe, I was ready for it. He threw his duffel bag in the corner of the guest room like it didn't weigh anything, then followed me back out to the porch with 2 beers in hand. That was always his way, casual, unbothered, but with this quiet attentiveness I never really understood until I started realizing just how much I noticed it. He remembered where the bottle opener hung on the nail by the kitchen window. He remembered how I liked my beer, cold enough to sting your throat a little. "You still got that old saddle I nearly broke my back on?" he asked, flopping into the chair beside mine. I laughed, the sound coming out a little too eager. "Still in the barn? Still cursed? You want to take your chances again?" He grinned over the lip of his bottle. "Not without life insurance." That was the thing about us. We slipped into old rhythms like we'd never left them. The banter, the teasing, the way he always managed to say just enough to make my heart stumble but not quite fall. We'd known each other long enough to have history, but not so long that we'd run out of things to say. Summers, harvest seasons, fixing fences, sharing bad coffee and better stories. He always came and went, like a wandering star brushing just close enough to warm me before drifting off again. That evening, we walked the fence line together. He asked questions about the horses like he always did, though he never really remembered their names. He pointed out a busted rail and offered to fix it, even though he'd probably spend more time cursing the hammer than using it. Still, I liked having him close. I liked how our arms brushed occasionally as we walked side by side and how he didn't pull away. The sun slipped low on the horizon, casting a honey glow over everything. I tried not to stare too long when he stopped to take a photo of the field, muttering something about how he missed this kind of peace. His voice was quieter when he said that, like maybe there was more behind it, but I didn't press. I never did. I was too afraid of what I might find if I pushed too hard. That night, over a fire pit and another round of beers, we talked about nothing and everything. Old music, bad dates, how the world seemed to be spinning faster every year. He shivered once and pulled the blanket tighter around his shoulders, then looked at me with that half smile. "Still only got one extra sleeping bag, right?" he asked. "Only ever needed one," I said. It came out casually, but I knew the way I avoided his gaze gave me away. "Guess I'll fight you for it," he said, nudging my boot with his under the table. I rolled my eyes, but I felt the warmth in my chest bloom a little too easily. Later, when I went to check on the guest room, I noticed he hadn't unpacked much. His jacket was still slung over the chair, and his cologne, warm, clean, unmistakably him, lingered in the room longer than it had any right to. I leaned against the doorframe for a moment, watching the faint glow of the lamp spill across his face as he scrolled through his phone, his eyes soft, tired. He looked up then, like he felt me there. "You all right?" he asked. "Yeah," I said too quickly. "Just making sure you're settled." He smiled again, genuine, warm, maybe even a little grateful. "Feels good to be here." I nodded, but all I could think about was how close he was. How close he'd always been. And how much closer I suddenly wanted him to be. The morning started with the smell of burnt toast and the sound of him singing badly in the kitchen. Something from the early 2000s, off-key but with confidence. I stood in the hallway, watching him through the doorway, spatula in hand, wearing a shirt that was definitely mine. He must have pulled it from the laundry pile, and I should have said something, but the way it clung slightly to his back, the hem brushing the top of his shorts. God, it did something to me I didn't want to examine too closely. "You hungry, ranch boy?" he called over his shoulder, grinning when I finally stepped in. "I'm questioning your definition of edible," I said, nodding at the charred toast. "It's artisanal," he replied, completely unfazed, sliding it onto a plate like it was gourmet. "You're just uncultured." We ate at the counter, shoulder to shoulder, legs brushing occasionally. He didn't move away when our knees touched, didn't even flinch. I tried to stay focused on the food, the weather, the chores, anything but the way his fingers drummed against the counter in a rhythm I was starting to memorize. Later that day, I suggested a ride out to the ridge. He agreed, almost too quickly. I saddled the horses and he helped, his hands clumsy but eager. He was all energy and laughter, like he couldn't sit still. He kept glancing at me while tightening the straps, like he wanted to say something but kept changing his mind. By the time we reached the ridge, the sky was already starting to shift, gray clouds swallowing up the blue faster than expected. I glanced up and frowned. "We should head back," I said. "You always this cautious?" "Only when I have to babysit city boys." He grinned. "Hey, I can handle a little weather." He couldn't. Within 15 minutes, the wind picked up, and the first drops hit like warning shots. We made it as far as the north edge of the property before the real downpour hit. Sheets of rain so thick it blurred everything. I cursed under my breath, guiding us toward the old cabin by the stream. It hadn't been used in years, but it was dry, and at that moment, it was our only option. By the time we made it inside, we were soaked to the bone. He pulled off his jacket, water slapping the floor in heavy drops. I yanked mine off too, shivering, as the air hit my skin. "Well," he said, breathless, dripping, laughing a little. "I always wanted to see this place." I grabbed the emergency blankets from the old chest, tossing one to him and trying not to stare too long as he peeled off his wet shirt, his chest rising and falling with each breath. I turned away too quickly, pretending to fumble with the lantern. My heart pounded so loud I was sure he could hear it over the rain hammering the roof. "You okay?" he asked. "Yeah," I said, voice tight. "Just cold." He stepped closer, rubbing his arms. "You're shaking." "I'll be fine." But then he was next to me, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating off his skin. He tugged the blanket over both of us, his shoulder brushing mine. I froze, torn between leaning in and pulling away. He didn't seem to notice, or maybe he did and just didn't care. "You always do that," he said softly. "Do what?" "Pull back when I get close." I turned to look at him, and he was already watching me, his eyes darker in the low light. His lips parted like he wanted to say more. My throat went dry. "I don't," I lied. He smiled faintly, like he saw right through me. "You do." The silence stretched. His knee pressed into mine again, and this time he didn't shift away. I felt his fingers brush against my hand. Just once, light enough to pass for accidental if I wanted to pretend it was. But I couldn't. Not anymore. I should have said something then. Something honest. But the words caught, thick and tangled, behind years of fear and second-guessing. I'd spent so long pretending I was fine just being near him, that friendship was enough, that wanting more would ruin everything. And yet, there he was, sharing warmth under a blanket, eyes flicking, to my mouth and back again, breathing just a little heavier than before. "I miss this," he murmured. "Being out here? You, this version of you, quiet, honest, the way you look when you think no one's watching." I stared at him, stunned. He wasn't teasing. He wasn't playing around. His voice was too soft, too careful. "I didn't know you noticed," I said. "I notice everything about you." I felt that like a punch to the chest. I wanted to reach for him. I wanted to pull him in and let everything I'd been holding back fall away. But I didn't. Not yet. I just sat there, skin on fire, heartbeat wild, trying to decide if falling would be worth the crash. The storm outside roared on, but inside that tiny cabin, the only thing louder was the silence between us. Thick, waiting, heavy with everything we hadn't yet said. The storm didn't let up for hours. We'd long since run out of things to pretend to talk about. Weather, horses, stupid jokes that barely landed. Now, the only sounds were the crackle of the small fire I'd managed to coax from what dry wood we had, and the occasional shift of him adjusting under the shared blanket. Every movement sent a wave of awareness through me, his leg against mine, the brush of his arm. His breath, slow and even, but I could feel the tension in it, just under the surface. He was watching the fire like it held answers. His eyes flicked toward me, then away again. Back to the flames. I couldn't do this anymore. "You remember?" "That night," I started, voice rough from disuse. "About 3 years back when you came up for harvest and stayed the week?" He turned to me, brow furrowed slightly, but he nodded. "Yeah. You had me up on that ornery horse that nearly threw me. I still tell people that story. You told me, before you left, that I was the calmest person you knew," I said, not quite looking at him. I laughed it off, but that stuck with me. He was quiet, waiting. So I kept going. I'm not calm, not really. I just learned to be quiet. Keep things in. Make them easier for other people to be around. I swallowed. Hard. The heat of the fire was nothing compared to what was building in my chest. But when you said that about me being calm, I realized I wanted to be that, for you. Wanted to be someone you could come back to. He didn't say anything, and I hated the silence. I could feel it pressing down on my ribs, waiting to see if I'd keep going or shut myself back up. So I kept going. "I think about you all the time," I admitted, voice lower now. "Not just when you're here, especially when you're not. I think about the way you talk, how you laugh when you don't mean to, the way you look at things like you're trying to memorize everything so you can take it with you." I finally looked at him. He wasn't smiling, he wasn't even blinking. And I've spent years telling myself that I can live with being your friend, that it's enough, that I can watch you come and go and not want more. But I'm tired of pretending. His mouth parted slightly, his eyes wide, and then, finally, he spoke. I didn't know if I was allowed to feel the same. That stopped me cold. "What?" He exhaled hard, like the words had been coiled inside him for too long. "You have this way of making everything look easy, like nothing rattles you, and I thought, maybe I was imagining it. The way you look at me. The way you pull away right when I want you to stay close. I thought I was protecting something, I said quietly. Us. You. I didn't need protecting, he said, his voice soft, but sure. I just needed a sign. Something broke in me then. Something that had been tight and twisted for too long. Years of silence, glances that lingered too long, words swallowed and moments missed. It all bubbled up, and I reached for him before I could stop myself. He didn't hesitate. Our lips met somewhere between a question and an answer, all the unspoken things crashing to the surface. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't perfect. My hands shook a little. His breath hitched when I cupped his jaw, fingers brushing the stubble there. He leaned into me like he'd been waiting for permission. The kiss was soft, tentative at first. But when he tilted his head and pressed back harder, when his hand slid up my neck and into my hair, it deepened. I felt the weight of every missed opportunity. Every night I'd laid awake wondering what this might feel like. Every almost that had haunted me. When we finally pulled apart, our foreheads rested together. His thumb brushed my cheek like he couldn't believe I was real. I've wanted that for so long, he whispered. Me too. He pulled back just enough to look at me fully, eyes flickering with something deeper than just want. Why now? Because if I didn't say something tonight, I never would have, and I would have hated myself for it. He nodded slowly, like that made perfect sense. Like he'd had the same conversation in his head 100 times. I don't know what this means, he admitted. I mean, I do, but I don't know how to do it, what it looks like. We figure it out, I said, one day at a time. He smiled then, small and real, the kind that made his whole face light up. Okay, we sat there, tangled in each other and in the blankets, the storm easing outside into a gentle patter against the roof. I traced lazy circles on the back of his hand, and he leaned into my shoulder like he'd belonged there all along. There was still fear, still doubt clinging to the edges, but there was also something else now, something that felt like peace, like the beginning of something we hadn't dared to hope for, but maybe finally believed we deserved. Neither of us moved for a long while. The fire crackled softly beside us, casting a flickering orange glow across the cabin walls. He was still leaning into me, his head resting just below my shoulder like it was the most natural thing in the world, like it had always belonged there. And maybe it had. I kept waiting for the weight of what had just happened to hit me like a storm surge, to knock me over with panic or doubt. But all I felt was this stillness. A quiet that didn't come from shutting anything out, but from finally letting something in. He stirred a little, then shifted to look up at me, his eyes lazy and a little glassy. You know, he said, voice husky from the fire and the moment. For someone who's supposedly calm, you're kind of a mess. I chuckled, brushing a hand over his damp hair. Takes one to know one. He smirked. I'm charming and endearing. You're broody and emotionally constipated. Bold words from someone who took 3 years to say anything. I was waiting on a sign. You were waiting for me to grow a spine. He shrugged and tucked his hand into mine. Maybe. The teasing made it easier to breathe, but beneath it, there was something new in the air between us. A looseness, a kind of warmth that made our touches linger longer, our words fall softer. It wasn't a sudden transformation. We didn't magically become different people. But the lines we used to dance around had disappeared, and all that was left was honesty. His thumb traced idle shapes across my knuckles as he watched the fire again. I could feel his thoughts working, the way he always got quiet when he was chewing on something important. What now? He asked eventually. I mean, I'm not going back to the city for a few weeks, but I looked down at our hands. We don't have to figure it all out tonight. But I want to. I want this. Whatever it looks like. His grip tightened just a little. You sure? I nodded. It's going to be messy. We've got miles between us, different lives. And you still can't saddle a horse without looking like you're auditioning for a slapstick comedy. Wow, he deadpanned. Romantic. But I'm not walking this back, I said, cutting through the joke with something solid. I've wanted you for too long to pretend I don't. He looked up, and I felt his whole body soften beside me. Good, because I don't want to go back to pretending either. We lay back after that, sharing the blanket and watching the light flicker across the ceiling. He kept reaching for me, like he needed to confirm I was still there, fingers brushing, my arm, his knee nudging against mine. And I let him. I welcomed it. Every small touch felt like rewriting history, like undoing the years we'd spent building walls we didn't need. You snore, he said suddenly. I don't. You absolutely do, like a chainsaw. That was once. I had a head cold. Nope, chronic chainsaw, man. This is something I'm going to have to live with, apparently. I laughed, rolling onto my side to face him. You're not exactly low maintenance either. I've seen the amount of skincare products you travel with. That stuff has its own luggage, he shrugged. Gotta keep this face pretty for you. And just like that, the weight and fear of our confession gave way to something lighter, real, us, but new. We didn't talk about love yet. That word still hung somewhere on the horizon, not because it wasn't true, but because we were still discovering what it looked like in the open. Still learning how to say it with our bodies, our jokes, our silences. But when he reached for me again, curling close and tucking his head under my chin, I knew we'd get there. Not all at once. Not in some dramatic declaration, but in moments like this, quiet, steady, undeniable. The morning broke quiet, with light slipping through the cracks in the cabin's old shutters and spilling across the worn wood floor. The storm had passed sometime in the night, leaving behind the kind of stillness that feels earned, like the world had finally taken a breath. I woke up to the weight of him still against me, his arms slung over my waist, his breath warm at the back of my neck. For a moment, I just lay there, listening to it, memorizing it. I didn't want to move. I didn't want to shift and risk that fragile line between dream and reality snapping. But eventually, he stirred. A soft groan, a stretch, and then a hand trailing lazily down my chest. You're warm, he mumbled. You're heavy, I shot back, but there wasn't any bite in it. Just a smile I couldn't hold back. He tightened his grip around me, nosed into the curve of my shoulder. Deal with it. You're stuck with me now. God, I hoped so. Later we stood outside on the porch, steaming mugs in hand, watching as the sky cleared fully and the fields stretched out golden and wet before us. The horses had come out from the barn, noses twitching, tails flicking lazily. Everything smelled like damp wood, earth, and the start of something new. He leaned into the railing beside me, his shoulder brushing mine in a way that felt deliberate. Claimed. You ever think about selling this place? He asked, not looking at me. Sometimes, I said, but not seriously. Why? I don't know. Just thinking. Wondering how a city boy fits into all this. You don't, I said. He raised an eyebrow, mock offended, until I added, not yet, but you will. His grin came slow and crooked. You gonna teach me how to saddle a horse without making a fool of myself? Maybe, I said, bumping his hip with mine, but I'm not making any promises. He laughed, and the sound of it settled something deep in my chest. We didn't talk about the bigger things yet. Not about what it would look like when he went back to the city. Not about how often we'd see each other, or what we'd tell people. But we didn't need to. Not today. Today was for this. For standing side by side, watching a world slowly dry off after a storm, knowing we'd both survived one of our own. He reached over and took my hand, his fingers lacing easily with mine. That one simple gesture, quiet, grounded, real, said everything. We stood like that for a long while, watching the day stretch out before us. Eventually he said, "You know, I think I could get used to waking up here." I turned to him. The sun catching in his hair, lighting up the tiny creases at the corners of his eyes. "Yeah?" He nodded. "Yeah, if you're here too." I squeezed his hand. "I'm not going anywhere." And I meant it. Whatever came next, distance, logistics, messy conversations, we'd figure it out. Because the hardest part was already behind us. We'd spoken the thing out loud. We'd stopped pretending. The future stretched out like the fields before us, wide, open, a little uncertain. But for the first time in a long time, it didn't scare me. It felt like possibility. Felt like hope.